Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us at today's Process Palooza workshop session. I'm Mujgan Amini, Director of Process Management and Continuous Improvement at the University of California, San Diego in the IT Services Department. I'll be today's moderator. Today's topic is about bringing clarity to complex business processes with something we call process landscape. You'll learn all about them. Please feel free to use the Q&A window to submit questions at any time during the presentation. Just click the Q&A button below and we'll do our best to keep the answers flowing. I just want to remind you that the session will be recorded and placed on the Process Palooza website at processpalooza.ucsd.edu. The webinar also has closed captioning. So you can click on the closed caption button at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitles. Instructions are in the chat as well. And now I'd like to welcome today's speaker, Prachi Raheja, a Lean Six Sigma practitioner with over 12 years of experience in lean practices. She's an engineer, an MBA, and a Lean Six Sigma black belt. Here at UC San Diego, she manages the Continuous Improvement Program at IT Services and is also responsible for managing the Campus Lean Bench program. Prachi, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mojgan, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Friday. Fun fact, it's the 21st day of the month in the 21st year of the 21st century. And I am here today to share with you a foundational process improvement tool that we have been using at UCSD and finding it very effective in exploring processes, especially under a large administrative area, such as everything under the umbrella of student administration, or everything under the umbrella of research administration, or everything under the umbrella of financial administration, and so on and so forth, for a university as large as UCSD. Now, this tool lends itself beautifully to business areas larger or smaller than this in size and complexity. So let's dive in. Well, specifically at UCSD, we are currently going through a massive transformation, and we are replacing almost all of our administrative systems. And since we do not want to take our old inefficient processes, some of them really broken processes, to the new system, or the new kind of administrative systems that we are transferring to, that has created a massive motivation for us to build solid foundation of better processes and setting us on a path of discovery. And in that journey, we have been using this tool quite extensively. So I'm excited to share this tool with you today. All right. So let's dive right in. I invite you to enjoy a few sights of lush green forests with me as we go along this journey, and better yet, imagine yourself being there. Now, as you're looking at this picture, I'm going to give you a goal. Your goal is to gain understanding about this forest or this conservation area, whatever it looks like, and create a strategy to explore this space. Think about how this forest sustains itself. Think about where it gets its water from. Think about what kind of wildlife it might have. Think about if you need to reach a specific destination within this space, how will you get there? Now take it a step further and also think about, would it be effective to change or improve certain portions of this space? Let's take a moment and think through some of these questions and make decisions about what your answer or what your thoughts are. How does that sound? Probably sounds crazy, right? You're thinking, are you serious, Prachi? Like, looking at this view of the forest, how can I answer those questions? If I need to make all these important decisions, I need more information. You need to give me something more to work with. This view is not giving me what I need to explore this area. So to that, I'm going to say, okay, you're in luck today. I want to be a good host. So I'm going to give you more than what you got in the previous slide. I'm going to give you the boundaries of this area. I'm going to tell you that this is a conservation area and it extends over 100 acres of land. And here is the shape of the area. There, now you have more information. Now let's take a stab at answering those questions that we asked earlier. You're still thinking, really? I know how far this area extends now. And okay, I also know this is a conservation area. But I still do not have information that allows me to navigate myself and find out what I need to know to make decisions you asked me to make. So then I'm going to ask you, okay, then you tell me, what is it that's going to take to navigate yourself and explore this land? What would help you to find out your way around this dense space and be more confident and informed about, the decisions that you need to make about this space or how you're going to navigate this space? Would something like this help? And I understand that some of you might be watching this webinar on your phones or smaller devices, and you're probably not able to read all the details on this slide or on this picture. But this picture basically gives you where the forest land is, where the wildlife is, the names of the passages, which way to get there. It gives you where the streets are. It also gives you my personal favorite, the one that I'm going to spotlight it here so you all can see it. This one over here that says closed during construction. Now take a note of that, because this can become really interesting in the context of discovering processes while implementing new systems. We might talk about this later a little bit more. Also note that this view shows you the signs to the restaurants or the restrooms, but it doesn't tell you what menu is serving today in the restaurant. It tells you that this area is closed and under construction, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what is going to be building here, why they are building it, and how they're going to build it. Can you guess why? You guys have probably guessed it. You're right, because that's too much information to be published on this single page. And if we publish that level of information on this page, we might not be able to get to the right level of detail that allows us to absorb the information that we need on this one-page view. And by now, some of you might have guessed that we're looking at the map of the San Diego Zoo. Especially those who are locals here might know it intimately. But let's explore what a map is. A map is a symbolic representation of the selected characteristics of a place, usually drawn on a flat surface. A map presents a simple visual way of presenting information about that place. And that is exactly what a process landscape does. That's precisely what the process landscape is for. So what is a process landscape? Process landscape provides a foundation for process analysis. Whenever we are conducting any kind of discovery on our processes, we are typically gathering information about these three primary questions. What is it that we do? How do we do it? And who does it? Process landscape focuses on the aspect of what is it that we do? What capabilities are we offering with this process? So our goal then becomes to represent a complete business process area on one page, at least at the highest level. Of course, we can decompose it down and add more details with additional documentation, but at the highest level, we should be able to express the entire business process area on one page. Now, some of you, or you might find this limited, or kind of a limiting thought that we have to represent everything on a single page. Why are you putting this limitation on us? Why one page? There is so much going on in my administrative areas that it's next to impossible to present it on a single page. People who are into organizing might be familiar with this concept That's called a container concept. We're giving ourselves a goal to limit the storage to the size of the container. If we are needing more space, that begs the question, do you need all this information represented on this page? Is it too much information? And so with that goal in mind, that we have this one page to represent everything that's happening in this large business area. And we need to find ways of simplifying information and making sure that we're able to present at the highest level what is happening in that business area. Here is an example of a process landscape that we recently put together for student administration at UCSD. So at the highest level, the purple boxes that you see represent what's going on in the student administration area, pre-enrollment, enrollment, and post-enrollment. We'll take a look at the blue boxes in just a minute. Let's focus on the purple ones for now. And then student finance that runs all across through pre-enrollment, enrollment, post-enrollment. And then we categorized, kind of another category, teaching and learning. That's the work that's happening in the background. And that's curriculum, teach, and learn. So at the highest level, these are the capabilities. This is what we're offering in the area of student administration. Now let's take a look at the blue boxes. Each purple box has been decomposed to the next level of detail and has been represented as these blue boxes within that area. We call that level 2. So the purple boxes are level 1 and the blue boxes are level 2. For example, in pre-enrollment, outreach and recruitment, application, review and selection, decision notification, student onboarding. Similarly, there are various kind of set of activities that are happening in each one of these level 1 boxes. Now, this view forces you to think about the boundaries of each level 1 box. And we spent quite a bit of time discussing where does level 1, let's say example, we are talking about pre-enrollment, where does it start, where does it stop? It was really interesting to discuss the area of student onboarding specifically, and to make a decision that, okay, for the purpose of this discussion, for the purpose of the discussion of process landscape, that's the boundary we are going to identify, and that's where pre-enrollment ends and enrollment, and after that, the life cycle kind of moves into the enrollment section. Now, this is the highest level 1-page view that I was talking about that creates a really solid foundation of the process landscape. So process landscape is a tool for communicating information about business processes across large areas to stakeholders in a visual, easily digestible way. Now, of course, we went ahead and decomposed each one of those areas into, you already saw the level 2 on that brief level 1, kind of the high level view page that we saw previously. That's the same blue boxes that are represented here as well. And then we decomposed each one of these blue boxes further into level 3. In our experience, it is at level 3 where we get the right amount of detail to make informed decisions about prioritizing the process for further deep downs or not, or how much pain is there in that area, or is this area out of scope if we are talking about a system implementation, or if we are talking about process improvement. It is at level 3 that we are able to make really informed decisions, and we're able to communicate with stakeholders who are running these processes from day to day. I'm going to scroll through the next few slides as they show the decomposed level 2 and level 3 for all of those 7 areas that we saw on the very first slide that showed us the high level overview of student administration. So having said that, process landscape then becomes the art of simplification. And when you're having these sessions, when you're trying to put a process landscape together, you want to keep your thoughts focused on what is it that we are trying to deliver? What's the outcome? What's the outcome of this entire functional area or the process area that we are looking at? And so it's really important that we think in terms of capabilities and functions, not in terms of org structure. This one is something that we trip over, or when we are having these sessions, This comes up again and again, and we make an intentional effort in making sure that when we're putting the process landscapes together, we're not aligning with the org structure, we're aligning with what is being offered in that process, so that process landscape view then makes us more capable of being able to look over at each other's processes and how these processes connect to each other, even if they may live in different areas of the org structure. We want to make sure that we are thinking about what is being delivered, not how. We also should be prepared to come up with new terms. And what I mean by that is that, sometimes when we are going through, like I said, when we're going through this exercise of putting the process landscape together, there might be functional areas that are not even represented as a functional area on the org structure. They are represented as departments that do different various things. But as a functional area, we may need to come up with a new term that represents that function. We also have found ourselves kind of contemplating the definitions of what an alumni is, even what a student is, or what a former student is, and things like that. And it forces us to come to consensus about those terms, at least for the scope of discussion about the process landscape. And then, once we form these definitions, we socialize them further, and it just helps to bring the stakeholders together. We also need to remember that there is going to be a lot of to and fro discussions, iterations. The very first time you start whiteboarding it out, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to take a few iterations before you get to that one-page view. And last but not the least, we're not writing a novel. So it's really important that we keep it simple, we keep it very, very precise, and keep the information really limited on that one page and in as few words as possible. Having said that, I think this quote from Steve Jobs is very timely. Just to put that, the one pager together that I shared with you for student administration, and then the 7 pages under it that had the decomposed view of each one of those level 1 areas. We conducted around 15 to 16 workshops, each one 60 to 90 minutes each, engaging participation from 200 subject matter experts across the campus. And this was just the time that we spent together in a room, not counting multiple hours that went into preparation for these workshops, in the identification of subject matter experts. That's always an important one, and we need to make sure that we've identified the right subject matter experts for that session. We also spent multiple hours after the process landscape document was drafted in socializing it and making sure that it is shared with the university-wide stakeholders, and we're able to get their blessings on that process landscape so that everyone's on the same page about it. And the document can be really effective in future communications once it has the blessing, and it has been seen, and it has been edited. So we did get further fine-tuned, kind of few fine-tuned pieces of information once we socialized it with university-wide stakeholders. But that first draft that we kind of landed on after multiple iterations with a set of about 200 subject matter experts was pretty accepted and embraced when the time came to socialize it with additional university-wide stakeholders. So in the post-COVID world, these sessions look something like this. We get together on Zoom, there are multiple participants, and we use tools like, the screenshots that you're seeing on the screen. These are tools like Lucid Spark, which is an interactive whiteboarding tool, Lucid Charts. We also now use a tool called ProMap, which we use for detailed current state mapping and things like that. But yeah, in the post-COVID world, these sessions have been conducted through Zoom, and we have been successfully able to engage our subject matter experts. Over a period of time, we've kind of worked on our skills to get past the challenges that are thrown at us due to not being able to have that person-to-person interaction. In the pre-COVID world, it looked something like this, because some of our sessions happened in the pre-COVID world, which feels like prehistoric times now. And the advantage that we have now in the post-COVID world with these times is that with the latest whiteboarding tools that we have available to our exposure now, our Post-its don't fall down on the floor anymore. So we like that and enjoy that. So I know many of you who are attending this session today are probably in roles where you find yourself facilitating something like a process landscape, or facilitating process discussions, or you might be service owners, or you might be department leads and might want to do an activity like that. And so as a process landscape facilitator, your job is to be curious and to engage your stakeholders. Your job is to ask a lot of questions and consolidate process clusters. When we were going through these whiteboarding exercises, all the conversations that were happening, we were making sure that they're being documented really well, because after the sessions, we would reconvene and kind of think through all the inputs that we gathered. And many times we were able to consolidate that information in a better way by going through multiple iterations. And so enriching that content by bringing out different perspectives, and also making sure that we don't overcomplicate things. Because remember, one of our key goals for process landscape is to keep the information simple, yet comprehensive. Another important thing to remember is that do not go down the rabbit holes. Like when you're engaging stakeholders of the size of one workshop having, let's say, 40, 50 stakeholders sometimes, or even 20, or whatever your number is, you want to make sure that it's really tempting to get distracted with going deeper down into conversations about a specific process. It's sometimes really cathartic talking about the process that doesn't work or is overcomplicated. And we get to do that. There is a time and place to do that, which is when you're doing current state process mapping, or when you're capturing pain points about a particular process. There's a time and place to do that. Process landscape is not it. When you're doing process landscape and we start going deeper down into discussions like that, you want to make sure that you hear your subject matter experts, but then you park those topics aside to be picked up later when we are having pain points discussions, or when we are having current state discussions. So once you have the foundational document of the process landscape, it really enables you, once you have this map, it really enables you to take flight to different process improvement destinations that you'd like to reach. You can use this document as a common basis to provide planning, or let's say, for example, your department is going through a change or wants to kind of reorganize. This can really form a great document to create that foundation for that planning. If you want to just encapsulate what your business is doing right now, so that can be used for, let's say, training new staff members, or sharing that information about your administrative area with other areas, or with other, let's say, another large institution, becomes a really good document, which has a simple, it can be digested simply and can be used as a discussion. It can be used to have great conversations with leaders, or with someone who wants to kind of know that high level view. For us at UCSD, it has been a really strong foundation to prepare for an intentional transformation. And I'll talk a little bit more about it on the next slide, but we have used this tool as a foundation to then take off from. If you want to make decisions about what processes we want to dive deeper in, what processes have the highest pain score, what processes are out of scope for us as far as this implementation is concerned, making all those decisions becomes so much more, we feel so much more confident, and we feel so much more informed in making those decisions once you have a picture like a process landscape in front of you. So for us, it has really helped us prepare for an intentional transformation. Once you have the process landscape, you're also able to involve appropriate stakeholders to define the strategy for next steps. Because now you know which areas you're talking about, who would be the right people to talk about those areas. And if you want to make a change, or if there is something that needs to happen in future, this becomes a really good foundation to have those discussions and create a strategy. It also enables us to meet our current and future challenges. It becomes a place to kind of to find a common ground, and then use that as our next basis for leaping forward. At UCSD, we found ourselves often using this document to evaluate our processes. So once we have the process landscape in place, we found ourselves using the next logical step, which is to evaluate our processes. So like I mentioned before, once we decompose the process landscape down to level 3, we're now able to use that information to make decisions about whether that process needs improvement. Because at level 3, we can now say that whether this process needs to be simplified, or whether we need to lean out this process. And once we say that, yes, we need to lean this process, then we can apply those DMAIC principles on it. We can map out the current state. We can find opportunities for improvement. So we start doing the DMAIC process, the Lean Six Sigma process on it once we reach level 3. But like I said, this tool provides us an overview at a really high level that can then be used to go deeper down. If we need to build standardization across those processes, or if that process has a high pain score, we are able to evaluate all of that based on the process landscape. Sometimes we may intentionally decide that after due consideration, we make the decision of carrying forward the current process in the new system with the possibility of reviewing it at a later time, or we say, yes, this process is golden. It is already as efficient as we need it to be for now, and we're going to carry it forward to the current, from the current state to the future state, like how it is. But at that point, when we are making that decision, we feel intentional about it, and we can, write it down in the decision log and say, yes, this is the process. It has been looked at. It has been evaluated. We're moving forward with this process in the new system with the current state. It helps us identify those areas that are out of scope. Sometimes what we've seen happening is that there's a new system, let's say, already being implemented in a particular zone within student administration, let's say, and that team is already taking care of looking at that process, implementing the new system. Remember that spot that we saw on the map that says under construction, closed under construction. And we might see those type of scenarios when we are looking at a large administrative areas such as student administration, research administration, and so on and so forth. And so we are able to call that out of scope for the current purpose of implementation or process improvement, whatever our intention is. Or we could identify a process as, we're not going to do anything about it. We're not going to touch this process. We're not doing any process improvement efforts on it because this process is going to be completely replaced, in near future. And so we might just make an intentional decision here and say, okay, we're good with this one. So that's how we have been using our process landscape, and we found it really, really useful. I would invite you all, if you're interested in learning more about continuous improvement efforts that are happening at UCSD, to visit ci.ucsd.edu, and you'll find lots of fun and current information there that you might like. I want to open the rest of the time for questions and answers, and feel free to chat your questions in the Q&A section. I'd love to see, what questions are out there.
Thank you so much, Prachi, for that very informative presentation and for walking us through what you've gone through, I think, in the last few years with the various systems. We do have quite a few great questions for you, and we're just going to be picking and choosing some of them. And it might go in random, so just go ahead and answer. So one thing was, you mentioned the rabbit hole, right? So the question was, what strategies do you use during those meetings to steer the group away from the rabbit holes?
That's a great question. When we started doing the process landscape exercise, we have been very, very intentional about it. We've shared, well, the very first step is to identify subject matter experts, getting the right subject matter experts in the room who are able to have that high level view and can represent the department at large compared to being able to represent a small area within that department. So when you get someone in the room who's able to see the department at that higher level and be able to talk about the department's, everything that's happening there, or how this department is interacting with other departments in the org structure, that is, I think that's one of the very, very important steps in the right identification of subject matter experts for process landscape. When we are doing current state mapping, I want to distinguish that, at that time, we go to the people that are actually conducting that process and know the details about that process. But when we are doing process landscape work, we need someone who can look at the process at a higher level. So that's step number one. Second step is we are very intentional about it when we are conducting these workshops about process landscape. Some of the slides that I shared today that talk about how we might come up with new terms or how we need to focus on what is the capability. These slides I have directly grabbed from those process landscape sessions. And we orient those people that are going to participate in process landscape sessions with that information. We prepare them that this is what you're getting into, and it might feel a little bit kind of all over the place in the beginning, but we are trying to get to a place where we're not trying to represent the org structure. We're not trying to represent the details of how these processes are happening, but we're trying to represent a one-page picture. So with that orientation and with having the right level of subject matter experts in the room, we're able to steer away those type of conversations to a large extent. It still happens that in the room someone wants to go deeper down that rabbit hole, and at that point we create a parking lot. We take the notes in the parking lot, and we invite those subject matter experts to come back to the details of that topic when we are discussing the current state for that process.
Okay, great. I think this addresses another question that came in. It was similar. Like, I'm sure with subject matter experts, people are really excited to get the information out. It could be at all different levels, not necessarily the rabbit hole, but how do you categorize them in the right level or help guide information to go into the right levels in the landscape?
Like I said, it is a long process. We ended up having 16 workshops to create those 7 pages, and each one of that workshop was like 90 pages, 90 minutes long or 60 minutes long. And so we did go through stages. We went through multiple stages where we were at one point, our process landscape looked like just boxes, 11 boxes stacked over each other, because all these processes are happening in parallel, and it didn't look like what it looks like today. But it's the process of iteration, really giving thought to it. And one of the key points here is to identify your boundaries. Where does this box start? Where does it end? If there is not a clear agreement on where this box ends, like I said, in terms of pre-enrollment, it was a difficult decision to decide, okay, we're going to stop it where we are doing orientation or onboarding for the new students. We define that boundary, what we mean by the onboarding, what we mean when this process stops. So defining those boundaries and making sure that the room is in the common space and in agreement with those boundaries helps a lot, because now everyone's able to say and kind of understand what we are talking about. So defining those boundaries, where does this box start and where does this box end, at least for the discussion of process landscape.
Okay, great. Prachi, you mentioned pain scores, gathering pain scores. At what point in time are you gathering the pain scores?
So we were gathering pain points at 2 different times. One, when we were going through the process landscape, some of the pain points came up naturally. some of these pain points that, that stood out, that were really significant, those came out during the process landscape discussions. And, we had help from a facilitator just noting them down and making sure that we have them parked somewhere. And so once we had all those pain points noted down, once our process landscape was a little bit more mature, we then aligned these pain points and decided where each one of these pain points belongs, in which box it belongs. And that way we were able to create like that initial view of pain points. But when we are going through the current state mapping, which means, taking one of those gray boxes, or taking one of the level 3 boxes and turning that into a full-fledged swim lane map, we're using ProMap, which is a process mapping tool for it. But when we are doing that, that's a great opportunity to really get into the weeds and collect pain points at that time. And that time we're able to tag the pain points and identify them clearly with the process that's being referred to.
Okay, so there's a couple level of pain point assessment. So it sounds like when we're creating the landscape, we can't always go down to deep dive every single one of those boxes. So at that point, we might consider what are our biggest pain point areas and then focus on those. So we're prioritizing. And then once we are actually at the level 4 doing current state mapping, then there's another level of tagging pain points, maybe inefficiencies and waste at that point as well. So that happens multiple. Great, that's great. So there's a question in here. Does UC San Diego implement the process improvements in a big bang waterfall manner or in an agile manner, like sections of process improvement at a time?
That's a great question. I think our process has evolved and has mainly been driven by the big bang implementation of our enterprise systems. We're doing a major transformation, and all of our systems, are being kind of replaced over a period of these 5 years, and we're in the last year of that transformation. And so that was the impetus for us to, kind of really go, I would say, big bang approach with, of course, these projects were timed, over a period of 5 years. But yet there were multiple projects happening at the same time. And every time we were doing an implementation, we made sure that we were intentionally looking at our processes. We were taking that opportunity to analyze our processes and not taking our old processes into the new systems. And so that created a lot of motivation for us to dig deeper into the processes and find efficiencies.
And I just want to add to that, even though we are in the midst of, I guess we could call it a big bang for all the enterprise systems. It's the enterprise processes as well that we're looking at. It is nearly impossible to implement process improvement in a big bang. We do try to group them, like we said, with highest, what's the highest desired area to improve, maybe the most friction or other reasons, and focus on those and even take it incrementally. People get fatigued with change. We have to be cognizant of that. So I think all things considered, it is agile, it's incremental, but we are looking at all of our systems at the same time in this era we're living at UC San Diego. So it's an interesting balance that we're working with. All right, so here's something might be a little bit similar. What are your thoughts on bottom-up designs, where you consider the first person in the process line as the priority in the design, kind of going the other way?
So what are my thoughts about that approach of going bottom up?
Mm-hmm.
I think, so I would say at UCSD, it's not like we're doing only one and not the other, because while all this is going on in the process landscape, improvements coming through the process landscape and process analysis coming through this approach, there's also green belt projects going on or other process improvement kind of initiatives going on where people are free to choose a process from their own area and kind of dissect it and make sure that they get an opportunity to improve that and things like that. And we're so fortunate at UCSD that the leadership has supported the LSS movement, and we have over 3,000 green belt graduates at UCSD, which means that many projects have happened at UCSD, which are all kind of selected, sort of a bottom-up approach. And so they are both happening in kind of in parallel at the same time in different areas of the university, which creates this environment or this landscape. It creates this ecosystem of process improvement coming in through multiple different channels and many different ways. For a project for a program as large as ESR, Enterprise Systems Renewal, that we are working on at UCSD, I strongly feel that there is a need to organize ourselves about how we are going to approach process improvement. Because otherwise, it's just like entering that dense forest without knowing our way around it. And so having this method of organizing ourselves, it adds some method to the madness, and it makes it more organized for us to approach process improvement in that way. It also makes sure that while we are organizing one process or while we're improving one process, we're not breaking this other process. Because the next process, we want to make sure that when we are putting improvements in one process, if we are just shifting over those inefficiencies to the next process, then it really doesn't give us the benefit that we are looking for. So this approach allows us to make sure that we are looking at it in a comprehensive way.
Great, thanks. We only have a couple minutes, but the questions are rolling in. I just want to add to what you just said. I think what you mentioned, we had 200 Smees, subject matter experts for the student information system. Our Smees are the key there. And once they're engaged, they're representing different process areas. It is basically talking to the person on the shop floor. So that's our key there. We do that at the entire level. And a question just came in, very important. I'm trying to rush through these. What do you do when you meet resistance from Smees, or there's disagreement or something? They don't want to participate or share information. Can you quickly speak to that in your experience?
In terms of process improvement, so I do want to talk a little bit about our strategic organization change management, which is an indispensable and a very critical part for ESR implementation. So an important arm of each project under this ESR umbrella is strategic organization change management, and their role, which is, they get a significant seat on the project, on every single project. Their role is just to look at the people side of change, to make sure there's not, the change saturation is being addressed, to make sure these type of, challenges that are associated with people being resistant to change are managed effectively. And we do have, support. We have solid support from that team, and I credit them for most of it. So I cannot take the credit for doing a lot of it. But from the process improvement side, being in this ecosystem, like I said before, where the people that we are working with, subject matter experts that we are working with, if we are dealing with 200 subject matter experts in the student administration area, many of them already have Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt training. Many of them have been exposed to Lean Six Sigma methodologies, continuous improvement methodologies, and having that common language and knowing that we are looking at the process and not what's going wrong or who is doing something wrong. We're looking at the process. We're trying to make sure that we find efficiencies, we reduce waste in the processes. Making process the hero of the conversation has been the key in terms of process discussions. And since Mojgan is one of our leaders on the strategic organization change management side, I would really love to hear from her about her perspective on this question.
Thanks, Prachi. I just want to be cognizant of time here because our webinar is actually closing out, but I'm going to offer that we stay on and answer Q&A because there's still great questions out there, but I wanted to formally wrap up the session, just be mindful of other people's time. So I just want to thank every one of you for participating in Process Palooza. I want to thank you, Prachi, for sharing your insights with us today. Again, we're going to be posting this presentation on the processpalooza.ucsd.edu website. And there'll be a post-event survey sent out. Please help us continue to improve our event by responding to that. And just a quick plug, on Tuesday, next Tuesday, May 25th, there'll be an exclusive focus on lean in higher education. We'll hear from University Vice President, Acting President, Lean Higher Education author, Bill Balzer, as well as colleagues from all over the world sharing their lean stories. So that's, please bookmark that. But again, I'm just going to offer that Sean, Aparachi, and I will stay on and keep this line open for those who want to, and continue to answer questions in the Q&A. But we will be turning off our video and audio just to officially close out the session, but we will be continuing, and the Q&A will be available to you all. Thank you.